Personal pension plans. This is something that I was unaware of. Probably a lot of people are. Where'd you come up with this idea?
Well, it all started, I would say, a few years back when I was thinking about what is available for business owners and for lawyers like myself to retire. And I quickly realized that, unfortunately, the only thing that was offered was either RRSPs, which are wholly inadequate when you have a certain level of income, and individual pension plans, which are very inflexible. So I thought, okay, what could we do? How could we improve on what exists right now? And that's how the personal pension plan came about.
So this is really designed specifically for the business owner. I mean, this is a way for the business owner to take advantage of the current laws as they exist to salt away some money for their retirement, something that a lot of business owners are not doing.
That's right. Business owners are one category. We also have incorporated professionals, so your doctors, dentists, lawyers, accountants. And you could even offer it to what we call the C-suite executives. So this is your chief financial officer, chief executive officer of large companies. Those companies could also offer a personal pension plan to their employees.
So there are specific things within the Canadian law structure, the tax laws that exist, whereby a lot of business owners are not aware that they can save a lot more money and pay less taxes, correct?
These rules are fairly arcane and most people just never heard of them, and therefore they don't know that this solution exists.
Let's talk about protection. This is something that is being monitored closely, watched, and approved by Canada Revenue Agency and the Ontario government. Two governments that we know of that are closely watching this.
Exactly. Every single personal pension plan is approved both by the Canada Revenue Agency and the Financial Services Commission of Ontario. You can't set up one of our plans without two levels of government approving the plan.
So this is part of your sales pitch that you can make to business owners that this thing is protected by two government agencies, and it's, and you're being watched and monitored by those agencies.
Well, it's actually a lot more solid than that, because not only is the government watching, the assets themselves are held inside of a trust fund, so they're protected from bankruptcy.
And they're not being held by you in particular. This is, the way to protect yourself and your reputation. These are being held outside by investment companies?
By our partners. So we have a number of bank-owned dealers and insurance companies who hold the assets of each PPP on their books. So they're protected by those companies.
So this would seem to me, if I'm a small business owner, to be a no-brainer. I don't want to cast aspersions on small business owners because they obviously know their businesses, but a lot of them don't get the retirement aspect.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of business owners think that the only way to retire is to sell their business. They don't realize that it's much more important to start saving now in a tax-efficient manner using a personal pension plan than waiting for the big day when someone will cut them a check and they can go and retire in Florida.
Because the business is only as good as the person running it. That's why it has no value if they're ready to retire.
Well, that's the problem, is that about 80% of businesses right now have no inherent value outside of their business owner. So if you take the person that started the business out of the equation with all of their Rolodex of contacts, there's nothing to buy. There's no value there. So people who think they can just sell and retire are going to be in for a rude awakening.
And it doesn't mean that if I'm a small business owner that I have to invest, millions of dollars or huge sums of money in order to protect myself for the future. It's every buck counts. Is that what we're talking about?
Pretty much. I mean, these plans are not designed for the super rich. Obviously, we have very wealthy customers, but you can have someone who's just starting in business, a 35-year-old that's paying themselves a modest salary. They could set up a PPP right now. And over time, they would accumulate a sizable amount of money, well in excess of what they could have done had they stayed in an RRSP.
And a large portion of your client base is actually directed to you by the major banks in this country.
Well, not just the banks, but a lot of investment advisors from across the country are finding out about our product and therefore realize that this upgrading from an RRSP to a PPP, makes a lot of sense for their clients. So that's how we get the business.
And investment advisors, once they come across this, are saying to themselves, this is great, or why didn't I think of that, or something of that nature? Do you get those kind of compliments?
We've had a lot of people ask me, why is it that this wasn't created before you came up with it? And often I have to tell them, I said, you know, it's like the Post-it note. Paper's been around forever, glue's been around forever, but it took until the 1960s, I think, or 70s for someone to put the glue in the paper to create the Post-it note. Why didn't it happen before? I don't know. Why didn't the PPP happen before? I don't know.
This wasn't a simple venture for you. It must have taken you some time to get this thing together.
Yes, we did a lot of research. We had to figure out how big the market was. We had to look at all the tax rules, the pension rules, and then look at the distribution networks and see whether or not there would be an appetite for a new product. So it took at least 4 or 5 years of planning to get the company up and running and sell the plan.
You know, when we talk about the major bank survey, the study that was done that shows 75% of business owners are not saving enough for their retirement, does that scare you?
It does, and those are the very people we're trying to help by giving them a chance to take taxable dollars from their corporation and put them in a tax-deferred environment, pocket the tax refund in the process, so that's new money they didn't have before, and now they have something to retire on if something goes wrong with their business.
I asked you, does it scare you? Because a lot of people think there is a monster storm on the horizon of people not having enough money for their retirement, and what are they going to do?
Yeah, and the problem with that is that you can't do it at the last minute. You can't just come up with a large amount of money at the last minute to retire. It has to be done gradually over time, using the tax-deferred nature of the product and the growth to ensure that you have enough to retire on. And you can't cheat. You have to be disciplined and start as soon as you can.
And I guess the advantage is the earlier you start, the better off you're going to be down the road.
That's right. The financial experts would call that the time value of money, being able to get the compounding going in a tax-deferred environment.
And so banks would come to you, or their clients would come to you after the client has spoken to someone at the bank and saying, look, I'd like to save some more money for my retirement, or I don't know what to do to get to where I want to be when I retire. So the banks will say, have you thought about personal pension plan, correct?
That's right. That's what happens. Often the advisor themselves initiate the conversation with their client by looking at the finances of their clients, and they realize that there are opportunities for additional savings. So they will come to us and ask to run an illustration. They'll say, here's the data on my client. Can you run an illustration? Let us know whether or not an upgrade to a PPP makes sense. We run the illustration, and that's how we get back to the client.
The bottom line being, when you're talking to a potential client or a client, is protect yourself.
Yes, protect yourself, save on your taxes, have a bigger pension nest egg. Those are all the key messages that we are trying to get business owners to understand, and their advisors.
And as you were saying earlier, it's not just, you know, the guy who owns the convenience store down the street. You have a lot of individuals who are small business owners in areas that we don't often consider, like a dentist, like a lawyer.
Or a franchisee. Think of someone who has a coffee franchise. They might be able to, if they wanted to, set up a PPP for themselves.
Who are your banking partners then? Are they all reputable organizations?
Well, we would think so. The largest bank in the country, the Royal Bank of Canada, has RBC Dominion Securities as its IROC dealer. And so they're the ones that we partner with when it comes to RBC customers. We're also working with Scotiabank, through Scotia Wealth. We also working with the 4th largest, I believe, insurance company in the country, Industrial Alliance. We're also working with some very large portfolio management firms that have billions of dollars of assets under management, including Connors Clark and Lunn. We've got Highview Financial, Newport Private Wealth, and so forth. So there's a long laundry list of partners.
So people go rest assured, you're not dealing with a fly-by-night organization. These are reputable financial institutions that are backing you up.
Well, they are managing the assets. We don't touch the assets. So therefore, if there's a problem with the returns, they don't come to us. They have to go to those financial institutions.